Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Virtual Discovery Day on Breakthroughs and Beyond. I'm Sarah, and as well as your host for today, I'm also the Community Events Officer here at Breakthrough T1D. Thank you all so much for being here with us this evening. Please note that closed captions will be provided for all of our speakers and exhibitor speeches tonight. And if you'd like to add live captions for me, you can do so by enabling live captions in settings when using Chrome. So for those joining us for the first time, we are Breakthrough T1D, formerly JDRF, the world's leading type 1 diabetes research charity. Whilst our name has changed, our mission remains the same, which is to improve lives today and tomorrow by accelerating life-changing breakthroughs to cure, prevent, and treat T1D and its complications. So tonight we're reflecting on a year of remarkable progress in T1D breakthroughs, and we'll look ahead to see what's next. Together, we'll explore the latest scientific advances, T1D technologies, policies, and community-driven efforts that are shaping a brighter future for everyone impacted by T1D. You'll hear from many members of our Breakthrough T1D team, from lived experience speakers and experts in the field, and also have the opportunity to ask your questions directly in the comments section. And as well as having the opportunity to ask our guest speakers questions, I'd also really like to encourage everyone on this call to use the comments feature to talk amongst yourselves. Share your experiences of managing type 1, get to know each other. I've seen a few messages that come in already, which is fantastic. One of the best things about these virtual events is how interactive they can be in the comments section. So do make sure you get involved. So before we hear from our first speaker, I'd like to extend a special thank you to our industry partners, as these events are only possible with their support. So a massive thank you to Abbott, Air Liquide, Dexcom, Insulet, Medtronic, and Ipsomed. Please note that reps from all of these tech companies are here with us tonight in the comments section. So please make sure you ask them any questions you may have, as they're happy to help. As you can see on the screen, we've got a very exciting lineup this evening. So a huge thank you to everyone who is joining us tonight. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, my colleague Molly Hillis, to give us a quick Breakthrough T1D research update. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Great. So, hi everyone. My name is Molly Hillis. I'm the Senior Research Communications Officer here at Breakthrough T1D. I'll be running through some highlights in research in 2025 and a couple of bits about what we should be expecting in 2026. So currently, globally, we're funding 577 research projects in 23 different countries, including 33 active research grants in the UK. We fund research to treat diabetes and make life easier for people with T1D. We do this by investing in new technologies, new and novel insulins, or working to prevent complications. We also work to prevent the progression of T1D through screening programs and immunotherapies. And finally, the ultimate goal for us all, to find a cure for T1D. So just to cover some research which was published in 2025, I'm going to wrap up some exciting developments for everybody. Firstly, in the treat column, we have updates from our Type 1 Diabetes Grand Challenge. Firstly, we have a novel insulins update. We have the first publication from Professor Michael Weiss from Indiana University. His initial research was on a new form of insulin that he'd developed, which combined insulin and glucagon in the same molecule. This molecule was tested in animal models and showed to have protective factors against low blood sugars. More research is required before this can be trialled on humans, but this is a huge step in the right direction for more sophisticated insulins and more protective insulins. Professor Sarah Richardson, also from the Type 1 Diabetes Grand Challenge, published findings in November this year. The new paper showed that type 1 diabetes is more aggressive when diagnosed at a younger age versus older, specifically in those diagnosed at the age of 7. This is because the cells are destroyed before they become larger and mature into full islets. This is why children lose their insulin production much faster and much more rapidly than those diagnosed when they are older. This is the first time that this has been discovered, so this is very exciting news within the type 1 diabetes community. In the prevent column, we have ELSA and teplizumab. So ELSA is a screening programme for 3 to 13-year-olds in the UK, and they announced exciting data this year just about their ongoing research, how many people they've trialled, etc. They outlined that ELSA was a feasible model for type 1 diabetes screening, with plans to monitor cost and implementation across the NHS. But you'll hear more about ELSA in today's talk. Teplizumab was a huge announcement in 2025 as it was approved for use by the MHRA. This drug has been shown to halt the development of type 1 diabetes for an average of 3 years, which is incredible. This, when combined with screening programs such as ELSA, has the potential to give people precious time without type 1 diabetes. We're still waiting for the approval of this by NICE, which would mean it would be available on the NHS. But again, teplizumab will be covered in more detail a little bit later on. The third and final column is the cure research. So the standout publication this year was from Vertex Pharmaceuticals and Sana Biotechnology. Vertex showed in their publication that 12 out of 12 participants in their trial had no episodes of severe hypoglycemia, and 10 out of 12 were now insulin independent, which means they didn't have to administer insulin via injection or pump anymore. This trial required immunosuppression, so it meant that medication was needed to stop the immune attack that normally happens with type 1 diabetes, destroying the new cells which had been implanted. Sana Biotechnology also showed some very exciting cure research developments. Their trial is in earlier stages than Vertex, so they currently had, well, at the time of publication, they had one person involved in the trial. However, excitingly, in their trial of one person, that person managed to remain insulin independent for 6 months with no episodes of severe hypoglycemia. But differently with Sana, this required no immunosuppression, so no additional medication was required. Both trials are expanding and continuing into 2026. So, research in 2026, what can we expect? So we're expecting more exciting updates from the Type 1 Diabetes Grand Challenge, including more news around novel insulins, root causes, and beta cell replacement. There will be updates from us regarding early detection, alongside lots of additional breaking global news stories. Excitingly, both Vertex and Sana, as previously mentioned, will be publishing additional data in 2026 around their cure research, so please keep your eyes out on our social media platforms for that one. If you want to keep up to date with our research and global research, please visit our website where we share breaking news and research updates every month. Thank you for your time and for listening to this research presentation today. Also, thank you for attending this virtual Discovery Day. Without our supporters, this research would not be possible. We're working to make breakthroughs happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. If you would like to keep up to date with the latest breakthroughs, I highly recommend you signing up to our Breakthrough T1D supporter e-newsletter. We'll keep you updated on the latest research, send information about upcoming world-class research talks and events where you can meet other people with type 1, as well as fundraising and volunteering activities. You can find this on our website or follow the link in the comments section to sign up. Okay, so next up, I'm very excited to welcome Anastasia Albanese-O'Neill, Vice President of Medical Affairs at Breakthrough T1D in the States, who is going to give us some more detail on screening and early detection of T1D.
Thanks so much, Sarah. I'm Anastasia Albanese-O'Neill, Vice President of Medical Affairs with Breakthrough T1D. And I am really excited to share some information with you today about screening for the early detection of type 1 diabetes. Let's get to it. So we have a vision for the early detection of type 1 diabetes. We see, or are beginning to see, thanks to a tremendous investment in research, a future where type 1 diabetes is identified years before individuals need insulin. These efforts are accompanied by effective preventive therapies to delay that requirement for insulin if we can catch type 1 diabetes early. And screening ideally will be integrated into healthcare systems around the world. So how are we thinking about doing that? If you go to the next slide, Sarah, I just want to step back a moment and just underline the rising global incidence of type 1 diabetes. This is a figure from The Lancet. And what you can see here is all of these lines are sloping up as you move to the right side of the graph over time. At the top of the graph, there is the country of Finland, which has the highest rate of type 1 diabetes in the world. But you can see that increase globally. And so there is a real sense of urgency to do something about this and intervene to slow down that progression to stage 3 or insulin requiring type 1 diabetes. On the next slide, I want to also just note that family history is a strong predictor of type 1 diabetes. And this is why most of our research and screening has focused on family members, specifically first-degree relatives, so parents, siblings, and children of people living with type 1 diabetes. And we've done this because in first-degree relatives, the risk is 15-fold. So about 1 in 20, where if you compare that with the general population, and these are data from the United States, the risk is about 1 in 300. And that risk varies globally from geographic region to geographic region, but we know in general that family members are at higher risk. Now, if we look on the next slide, this data for some of you living with type 1 diabetes or have a loved one with type 1 diabetes, this may have caused you some stress or worry or concern. And I hear you. And some people think, well, gosh, I'm really nervous about knowing my risk for type 1 diabetes, or if my child is in early stage type 1 diabetes. I want to share some statistics with you that I hope will be reassuring. 95% of family members are going to come back with no increased risk. They're not going to be found to be in the early stages of type 1 diabetes. And those are pretty good odds. I've been screened. I have a loved one with type 1 diabetes. I've been screened. So has my partner, my other children, and my nieces and nephews. And we've all come back without increased risk. And if you're in the general population, if you're listening and you don't have a family member with type 1 diabetes, 99% of the time, you're going to come back with results on that lab test that are should provide some level of reassurance that your risk is not increased or your child's risk is not increased and you're not in those early stages of type 1 diabetes. Let's move on to the next slide and talk about people who don't have a family history of type 1 diabetes. If you're listening with us today, you may be the first person in your family diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and that is very, very common. In type 2 diabetes, there is significant family history of the diagnosis, meaning somebody with type 2 diabetes can probably identify grandparents and parents and sisters and brothers and cousins living with type 2 diabetes. But in type 1 diabetes, it's almost the opposite. Between 80 and 90% of the time, people diagnosed with type 1 diabetes have no family history. That was the case in my family. And this is why we've decided to not just focus on screening family members, but on screening people in the general population. Because if we only screen family members, we're going to miss between 8 and 9 out of 10 people who are eventually going to be diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And we don't want to only identify 10% of people who have that risk to go on to a diagnosis. We want to identify everybody early so they can realize the benefits of screening. So what are we doing? Let's go look at the next slide. And I just want to remind folks, and this is kind of my last sort of early point, that type 1 diabetes affects people at all ages. Remember, type 1 diabetes used to be called juvenile diabetes because we thought it only affected children. And type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset diabetes. What do we know now? We know that children can be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, so it's no longer called adult onset diabetes, and type 1 diabetes affects people of all ages, all walks of life, all ancestries. It can impact anyone globally. I want to underline here, though, age at diagnosis. If you're looking at this graph, you can see that the peak incidence is between ages 10 and 14 years. But look at those, the blue and gray lines for both men and women. We can see that the diagnosis can happen later in life at age 50 or 60 and even into the 7th and 8th decades of life. And what's a challenge here is because we called it juvenile diabetes for so long, often adults diagnosed with type 1 are initially misdiagnosed or misclassified with type 2 diabetes. And we want to avoid that. So we renamed it type 2 diabetes. We've renamed our organization Breakthrough T1D, and we want to underline that people of all ages can be diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Let's move on to the next topic. Let's talk about screening for the early detection of type 1 diabetes. So how are we doing that? On the next slide, what you'll see is that we are looking for islet autoantibodies. Now that's a lot of words there. What are islet autoantibodies? Where islets are the cells in the body that produce insulin, and autoantibodies are proteins that can be detected in the blood, and they signal to us that the body's immune system is attacking and destroying the insulin-producing cells in the pancreas, the beta cells specifically. And these can be detected, these autoantibodies can be detected years, months definitely, and often years before insulin is required. So we can find this diagnosis early. It's now called stage 1 and stage 2 type 1 diabetes. Again, before you need insulin, and that means we can intervene. These autoantibodies are called insulin, IA2, GAD, and ZNT8. Let's go on to the next slide. where we can talk about the benefits of participating in autoantibody screening. What do we know? We can reduce the risk of a very serious medical condition called diabetic ketoacidosis, which requires hospitalization at a diagnosis of type 1 diabetes. This is really important. I've got the US data here, but I'm happy to share the data from the UK. Rates of DKA at diagnosis among American children are around 50%. We'll take an average. We know with screening for early detection, we can reduce that to 5%. And I would argue as a healthcare professional, that DKA at diagnosis is a medical trauma, something we want to avoid. Knowing early gives individuals and families time to plan and prepare. And if we identify people early, they can participate in clinical trials. And good news in the United Kingdom, the EMA has just approved, and your agency has just approved a therapy to delay the onset or the requirement for insulin in stage 3 type 1 diabetes. We can now officially slow it down. Let's look at some of this more in depth on the next slide. Here's information about the therapy. This is information on the pivotal trial that appeared in the New England Journal of Medicine. The drug is called teplizumab, and the commercial name is Tzield. It is now available to people 8 years and older who have stage 2 type 1 diabetes. That means they don't need insulin yet, but they've got those autoantibodies I just shared with you. This can delay the requirement of insulin for a median of 2 to 3 years, depending on the data that you're looking at. More and more data from the study, follow-up data is coming out. But the key thing, folks, is we need to identify people early through screening if they want to avail themselves of this therapy. I worked on this study when I was at the University of Florida, and it's really exciting now to see this option available to people in early stage type 1 diabetes in clinical practice. But that's not the only thing you can do. So let's look on the next slide. We are investigating a bunch of other drugs to figure out how to stop or slow down the immune system from destroying those insulin-producing cells in the pancreas. I've put a QR code here. You can learn more about these clinical trials. Talk to the folks at Breakthrough T1D UK to learn more about these clinical trials. Many of them are recruiting globally. We need to create a culture of research participation in the type 1 diabetes community. And the first step is knowing what clinical trials are available. One thing I will say about clinical trials to stop or slow down the immune system, many of them require that you enroll within the first 90 to 100 days following diagnosis, or that you're screened so we catch you in early stage type 1 diabetes. So check out this QR code, learn more, and talk to your physician and about the opportunity to participate and help us share the word. Let's go to the next slide. So I just want to highlight, and I think this is my last slide or second to last slide, that there are global screening efforts going on right now that you might not be aware of. We've invested money along with partners at the Helmsley Charitable Trust and government funding agencies and other private funding organizations in screening first-degree relatives, in screening the general population, in screening adults, and in genetic screening in pediatrics to learn more, to sort of fill in those gaps in the evidence where we don't have enough information to move forward. I want to highlight some really amazing investigators in the UK. We've got Kathleen Gillespie, whose lab is working on screening in adults. We've got Parth Narendran, who is working on the ELSA screening project. And then we've got Rachel Besser, who is working on a type 1 diabetes registry in the UK. These three professors are hard at work producing evidence in the United Kingdom to help us do a better job of screening for early detection and then intervening to slow down that immune system when it makes a mistake and attacks the insulin-producing cells in the pancreas. If we go to the last slide, I just want to ask all of you to get engaged in our efforts. I've got T1D Barbie here. Barbie lives with T1D, and I know we can't ask her, so I can't say for sure, but I suspect she would help us spread the word about screening for early detection and clinical trials. Thanks for your attention today. It's been really great to be with you, and I'm happy to answer questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Anastasia, for that brilliant presentation. Please do head to the comments section if you in StreamYard to read more about the UK-based statistics. read up more on the brilliant studies that are going on here, and find out more about how you can get involved in clinical trials. So up next, we're going to hear a couple of short 30-second presentations from our sponsors. If you have any questions for our sponsors throughout today's event, please pop them in the comments section, where representatives will aim to answer as many as possible. So first up, we have Abbott, followed by Air Liquide. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm Joe from Abbott. I'm going to take you through our Freestyle Libre system. Our Freestyle Libre 3 is the world's smallest sensor with the strongest Bluetooth connectivity, integrating with the MyLife Loop for automated insulin delivery. If you're considering Omnipod 5, our Freestyle Libre 2 Plus is a standalone sensor with a 15-day wear time, offering greater convenience and fewer disruptions. It also provides outstanding accuracy at the low glucose levels, giving peace of mind for those concerned about lows. Thank you, and I'm here for any questions.
Join a thriving community of people who stopped listening to what type 1 diabetes is supposed to be and started living the life they want with the T-Slim X2 insulin pump. Control IQ technology predicts glucose levels 30 minutes ahead and automatically adjusts insulin dosing. That means no more daily injections, no more finger pricks, and fewer sleepless nights. Start living the life you want with the T-Slim X2 insulin pump and Control IQ technology. A life without limits.
Thank you both so much. So our next speaker truly embodies the spirit of Breakthrough and Beyond, not only in managing type 1 diabetes, but in pushing past the challenges that physical activity can present. As a passionate runner, he brings a powerful perspective on resilience, determination, and what it takes to go the extra mile. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Bruce, over to you.
Sarah, and also a big thank you to Breakthrough Type 1 Diabetes for having me along this evening. I'm really delighted to be here and share my story with you. And just to say that I will be in attendance if you're watching this live. So if you've got any questions, pop them in the questions bar and I'll try and get back to you with an answer during the session. So I'm Bruce McLaren. I've been diabetic since 2002, and my story is all about the sort of lived experience of type 1 diabetes and running particularly, and I'm just going to sort of canter you through some of my experiences in that. My type 1 journey started back in, I think it was 1998 when I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. I put my body through an awful lot of stress. I wasn't very fit. I did it with a friend, a very short notice, and we got to the top. That's me on the top. But 6 months later, I was diabetic, and I'm pretty sure that stress was the trigger. Nevertheless, it didn't stop me. 18 months later, and probably to the shock of my diabetic nurses, I climbed Mera Peak in Nepal, which was 6,500 meters, even higher. It was wonderful, just about 20 miles south of Everest, so you could see Everest. It was very inspiring. Pleased to say I've never tried to do it. But yeah, that was sort of the start of my journey, and I was always determined to prove that type 1 wasn't going to stop me. I obviously started using multiple daily injections. I've been through a pump, CGM, and I'm now on the hybrid closed loop system. So I've had to develop strategies for every different type of treatment that has been available since I became diabetic. I then started running after a bit of a conversation in a pub, and I found myself in the start line of London Marathon 10 weeks later. Funnily enough, the person who had a charity place was with JDRF, now Breakthrough. So it was kind of like, that's my charity, that's my destiny, I have to do this marathon. And I did, and then I was hooked. I've now done 44 marathons, 39 ultras, which are runs longer than a marathon. And also another 30, I've got a little log, another 39 what I call fun runs, which are marathon plus runs with mates, just for a laugh. I'm kind of hooked. Why I run? I mean, I think the big reasons are just the sense of achievement of anyone doing something like this. You know, when you finish, it's really hard, and you feel really rewarded afterwards, and especially if you know that you've had to beat type 1 to do it. I also really passionately love showing to the world, not just to other people with type 1 diabetes, that type 1s can do anything they want to. I find that really rewarding, and that really drives me on when I'm having low moments. And also just the adventure of getting to new places geographically and physically. That's a really great experience as well. And I thought what I would do is just sort of canter through three of the bigger runs that I've done, just to give you an idea of what I've done and what we can all do if we put our minds to it. So the first one is the Ultra Tour de Mont Blanc. This is like the mecca of trail running. It's sort of becoming the world championship event, really hard to get into now. And what it is a 3-country circuit around the Mont Blanc Massif. It's 108 miles, it's 10,000 meters of elevation, and you can see that sawtooth graph there. That's all the climbs. It's brutal, it's relentless. It's a long time in your feet. It's challenging, but I got to the end, and that's me crossing the finishing line with my 2 kids, which was a wonderful moment, a very happy memory. The next one I took on was, and you might have heard of this, is the Marathon des Sables. Did that in 2023. This is a stage race, so it's set over 5 days. You run for a bit each day, and then you rest, whereas the UTMB was non-stop. The longest day is 90 kilometers, but it's hot. It's really hot. In fact, we got a heat wave. But it is absolutely beautiful. There's some pictures of it. I mean, the setting is just phenomenal. The biggest challenge for that event, well, one of the biggest challenges, is you've got to carry everything for the week, except water. They give you water on the day, and they give you a tent at night, but you're carrying all your food. So the consequence of that is you're living on limited carbs. I think I took 17,000 calories of food for the week. That was to eat, to fuel myself, and to fix all my hypos. And there's a glow. You can see the graph there. The biggest challenge for me was getting started every day, because you'd have a big breakfast, take a tiny amount of insulin, because insulin becomes super powerful when you start exercising. And then you would start, sit in the pen for 20 minutes, watch your blood sugar soar through into the 20s. And then you start running and it would come back down, and you'd have to then have a gel to fix the hypo that was about to happen. But once you've got through that, you can see it sort of bounces up and down, but it stays roughly within range. The other big challenge was keeping all the diabetic paraphernalia attached to my body. Obviously, it's hot, you're quite sweaty, and these sticky things aren't as sticky as you'd like them to be. So I think I was sort of swathed and taped by the end of it, holding everything in place. But I got through it, and I can tell you, sand does get everywhere. And the final one I wanted to mention was the Winter Downs 200, which I did at the tail end of last year. Now, what I didn't really clock was doing something in December means it's going to be dark for 17 hours a day. So there was a bit of a dark event, really. It's a 200-mile loop around southeast England. I've shown you a sort of picture of it there. It's non-stop. I think I was running for 63 and a half hours. And I think I slept for about 2 or 3 of them. Yeah, there's some pictures of it. You can see, I love that one with my little head torch flashing. And I've got a little video here that I thought I'd quite like to play, which is just the end of the race to give you a flavour of what it's like to finish a 200-mile run in the dark.
If you can see anything, I can't really see anything. I'll be looking the wrong way. Oh no, that's between the cars. Imagine we turn right. Oh, there we go, this is the finish. Can you see it? Thank you. This has been one hell of an adventure. 208 miles, smidgen under 64 hours. And we're coming across the line. Legs are still working. Amazing. Thank you. Right. Yeehaw! One very happy boy.
Yeah, so that was the Winter Downs 200. Actually, one other thing I should mention is there was about 75 people into that event. I finished 11th overall, which I was delighted with. But I was rather just staggered to discover the next day that I wasn't even the first type 1 diabetic. There was another chap who managed to finish 3rd, who was also type 1. So it's not just me that's a mad lunatic that does these sorts of things. Here's a graph of the first 2 days of my blood sugars during that event. As you can see, the things I would point out there, the orange boxes are amounts of carbohydrate that I've told my pump I've eaten. Top right, I obviously told it I had a few carbs. And you can see that sort of stopped a big spike. But I then didn't get any insulin for the next 4 hours because even the tiny amount I put in was dragging my blood sugars down. And then the next day, I didn't tell the pump that, although I had been eating, I didn't tell the pump I had any carbs, and I kind of stayed broadly in range. So that just tells you how the strategies you have to develop to help you exercise, but it is definitely doable. So I just sort of finish with the sort of mantras I have for my exercising. First of all, and the biggest one is type 1 diabetes does not stop you doing anything you want to do. And I believe that passionately, and I hope I demonstrate that by the things I do. Also, your body is a machine. So the hardest part is daily life, going gardening, walking to shops, unplanned exercise. I find that, if you're running for 4 hours, once you've flushed out all the active insulin, it's dead easy. You drop some food in, drop a little bit of insulin, and it's constant effort, everything stays balanced. It's the starting that's tricky. I remind myself that every day is a school day with type 1 diabetes. I'm still learning. I still pick up new things. I love to go into conferences and learning new stuff. Also, there's always a solution, whatever the problem. Other people will have faced it and will have had a similar experience. But trial and error, everyone's different. So trial and error is the only way to really solve these problems. And we always find a way through them. And just to re-emphasize it, active insulin and running are not good friends. Any insulin in your body when you exercise becomes, for me, 4 to 5 times as powerful. So I've got to know how much I've got in me at the start, and I try and avoid running until I've 3 or 4 hours after I've taken insulin. Otherwise, it's a really big battle. And finally, hustle for new technology. Get onto new technology as soon as you can. It's always better. I've never handed any back, and I don't know anyone who has. So yeah, that's me. Thank you for listening. I hope you found that interesting.
Thank you so much, Bruce, for that super inspiring presentation. If you would like to follow in Bruce's footsteps and get involved in some of our fundraising challenges, please do take a look at our website, as we have a wide range of UK and overseas challenges available, whether that's a 5K one walk or a hike up Kilimanjaro. We have lots of options available for you to get stuck into. So I'm now going to hand over to our next speaker, my colleague Chris Bright, for some insight into the exciting work Breakthrough T1D are supporting and encouraging in the physical activity space. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for the opportunity this evening to come and talk to you all a little bit more about physical activity, exercise and sport. Just a very brief introduction about myself. So I am Chris Bright. I am the Community Partnerships and Events Lead at Breakthrough T1D. I also founded the Diabetes Football Community, a peer support project set up to bring people together through the sport of football impacted by diabetes. And I also, in a previous life, had an opportunity to play for Wales as an international futsal player for a number of years, and as a part-time semi-professional footballer for a number of years as well. But the real premise of this opportunity to talk on our virtual this evening was to discuss what we as a charity have been doing to support around a really big and key theme on physical activity, exercise and sport. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of a recap of where we were at in 2023 when we began some of this real push towards driving further support in this area. We began with an online social media survey, which asked over 200 people what their key themes were for us to work on. We attributed it to Discovery Days and our community events program, but it was very useful in showing us what really mattered to our community and the key areas to focus on. And physical activity came out very high on that list in third. We then commissioned some insight work, so a bit more of a deep dive research survey into community to physical activity, exercise and sport. And then obviously from that opportunity, we had a number of key findings which have helped us shape the direction that we wanted to take and some of the work which has followed in the coming years. So as you will have seen on the previous slide, there was an area of education for people with the condition, which we really wanted to focus on. And as a charity, we have provided both virtual events focused on sport and physical activity, as well as in-person events focused on sports and physical activity and exercise. We've called them sports days. And we also have worked hard on our online content to ensure we have an offer where people can find out more about sport, physical activity and exercise in whichever way they deem suitable for themselves. But really importantly as well, on that previous slide, which talked about the findings from our survey, it was highlighted that actually some education is needed within the sports sector for those that facilitate, deliver, and maybe coach athletes and young people, grassroots and elite level sports people living with the condition. So we have worked hard on our partnerships and our connections in the sports sector, and we've developed a number of resources co-produced with key partners like Diabetes UK, as well as national governing bodies. You can see a couple of examples with the Lawn Tennis Association, with the Football Association of Wales, where we've developed a fact sheet and a set of guidelines specifically for coaches. But we've also developed webinars as well, which have gone alongside those guidelines with the Lawn Tennis Association and Football Association. But also we've done that piece of work as well with British universities and college sports, so BUCS. And we continue to get those opportunities come up to cascade really key information about diabetes and how people can support and facilitate an inclusive environment for people with a condition. And that really leads me on nicely to the work which has started in 2025, which is about coach education. So the University of Exeter have been able to commission a project which is focusing on developing an output for coaches to become more knowledgeable around type 1 diabetes. We are working together with Activity Alliance as well as Breakthrough T1D to help shape this and what comes next. But this is well underway now. And after a few months, it's looking promising in terms of some of the feedback which is coming in to help us develop that resource. But also some of the insights which national governing bodies have said about this being a really promising and positive project that they'd like to get behind as well. Coinciding this with our insight work, that community survey also being turned into academic articles. We want to raise the profile and the reach of the work we've been doing. So we've had the opportunity this year to submit to the British Journal of Sports Medicine about our approach and what we've been doing, and that was published earlier this year. And we're also very close to having an acceptance of an article within the Adapted Physical Activity Quarterly as well, again focused on the findings of our community insight, which we brought about in 2023. So it's really exciting to be able to move forward the reach of some of our findings and hopefully as a result encourage more research and more work in this area too. Alongside all of this work, we've been trying to enhance our global connections and the impact that we have around the world to ensure that everybody can access the latest and the best resources which are available to people with the condition and healthcare professionals to help with those wanting to take part in sport and physical activity. So we started, myself and Desi from Stanford University have started a global collaborative called Inspire T1D, where our aims really are about speeding up global access to exercise resources, fostering collaboration and support, and really improving education. And we're hoping to really drive best practice across the globe, and really key that we're always listening into the community and the needs that are there and what our community are after in terms of delivery of resources and the next steps for them. But we're also looking at how we work collaboratively to bring great people together and help them work with others that might be focused in the same areas to actually enhance what we're doing and make it reach further. And we've also got some really key audience areas which we've identified are really, really imperative to the direction that this takes and how we move things forward. So supporting the education of healthcare professionals, supporting the education of people living with the condition, and really importantly, educating those providers of sport and physical activity in the future as well. So it's really exciting to see where Inspire T1D will go in the future. But also this has been a huge development for 2025, where a lot of the evidence we were gathering, we've also been able to submit this alongside a key piece of work that was focused on the number of policies and provision which has been provided for people with diabetes in the United Kingdom around sport and physical activity, or the lack of. This has then this was submitted to Chris Bloor MP for Redditch, and he was able to then essentially deliver a debate in the Houses of Parliament in September 2025. So it was the first time that the UK government has ever debated diabetes to develop and collaborate diabetes within sport. A huge moment for the community, and an opportunity now to see how we can continue to develop and collaborate with the Department for Culture, Media and Sport to get more inclusive practices into sport and physical activity for people with diabetes. So I just wanted to play this video so that you could see the response from the UK government's Minister for Sport, Stephanie Peacock.
With disabilities and long-term health conditions to reduce exclusion from physical activity. And the member for Redditch gave some incredibly powerful and moving examples of the impact that stigma can have. And that is why it is clear there is more to do to ensure that the sports sector provides the support needed for those with diabetes. We expect all national governing bodies to have plans in place to support those with long-term health conditions and to make the most of training and support on offer from the professional development body for sport and physical activity, and of course the NHS. Whilst the research my honourable friend refers to indicates a lack of clear, explicit policies on chronic conditions like diabetes in many NGBs, the legal requirement to not discriminate and to make reasonable adjustments remains in force. This research clearly shows some specific areas of inclusion have more developed policies in place than others, such as diabetes. This disparity suggests a need for a more coordinated and robust approach to supporting individuals with chronic health conditions in sport. Therefore, we will continue to look for further answers, including through Sport England, conducting research with Diabetes UK on the barriers to and opportunities for physical activity, and I'm very happy to meet with the Honourable Member and the organisations he mentioned. Ultimately, this is about every part of the system, from the NHS to national governing bodies, to leaders, local partners, playing their part to make sport and physical activity easy to access and manage alongside diabetes. I will give way. Yeah.
And then lastly, just to round up with the exciting developments for 2026. So as you'll have seen from the response from the government, there's some really promising shoots of potential collaboration with the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, healthcare professionals and for charities and the sports sector to see what we can do around the environments which are created in sport and exercise settings. So we're going to continue to encourage that and collaborate wherever we are needed and wherever we can provide that support. Inspire T1D will be establishing a steering committee looking to develop an online conference in 2027, so aiming to deliver on that, and also looking to establish key working groups on themes which are important to the research community, but as well as those living with the condition as well. All whilst we continue to look at the resources which we have available to us, but also where we can collaborate with those in the sector to deliver on really important opportunities for raising awareness, but also delivering that key education into those that deliver sport and physical activity throughout. So we'll be working hard on our education and provision, and we'll be working as much as we can with those in the sector. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit around what we've been up to in previous years, and also a bit of a look ahead to 2026, where we'll be hoping to make more breakthroughs around physical activity, sport and exercise.
Thank you so much, Chris. Some brilliant insights there. Next up, we have a couple more 30-second clips from our partners at Dexcom and Insulet. Thank you.
Your diabetes goes where you go. Now, so do your glucose numbers. Meet the new Dexcom ONE Plus, an easy-to-use and more discreet way to manage your diabetes. Continuous glucose monitoring with automatic, accurate readings. No finger pricks, no scanning ever, and customizable alerts you can rely on, so you can confidently take action here, here, even here. The new Dexcom ONE Plus. Make more possible.
This is amazing. Diabetes never stopped me, it just gave me more to worry about. But Omnipod 5 works with my sensor to deliver insulin automatically, helping keep me in range. And it's waterproof. Let's go!
Life gets bigger when diabetes management gets smaller. Meet Omnipod 5. Automated insulin delivery simplified. Today's the day to try something new.
Thank you both. Okay, so moving on to our next section of tonight's event, we're going to be learning more about the breakthroughs in living and aging well with T1D. We have the brilliant Nicole Green here with us this evening to tell us more and to answer any questions you might have in the comments section. Over to you, Nicole.
Sarah. Hi everybody and welcome to this session on ageing well with type 1 diabetes. My name is Nicole Green. I'm an enhanced diabetes nurse. I also work at the Leicester Diabetes Centre. I help with research our patients with type 1 and type 2 diabetes. I don't have any letters after my name, but I'm a nurse with a special interest in supporting people to live really well with type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And I'm happy for anybody to reach out on my email, which I've put on the slides, to ask questions, to give feedback on their experiences accessing healthcare, whether that be good or bad, and to share ideas. So first of all, we'll talk about, we're going to talk about ageing well with type 1 diabetes. So as we know, when people were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes years ago, people didn't talk a lot about getting older with it. Now, more people than ever are living longer, working to older ages, travelling, being grandparents, volunteering and enjoying life, just as it should be. But as we get older, managing type 1 diabetes comes with different challenges. So today I want to share some ideas on how we can stay strong, avoid frailty and look after ourselves as we get older. And we'll also have a little think about what's new and what's coming next. It's important to talk about the difference between age and frailty. So ageing is a natural process. It's a universal process of getting older. But many older adults remain active, independent and healthy. But physical changes occur and they don't always affect our daily life or quality of life. Abilities and strength can often be maintained with healthy lifestyle and support. Frailty, on the other hand, is a medical syndrome involving reduced strength, resilience and energy. It increases our vulnerability to things like illness, falls and stress, and our ability to bounce back from those things as well. It can affect people at different ages, but it is more common later in life. It's important to remember it's reversible or manageable with the right help. Frailty can be associated with poorer quality of life, poorer physical function, and a higher risk of falls and difficulty managing conditions. So I thought, first of all, we'd have a think about the changes with age and frailty and try and understand that a little bit. As we age, our bodies and routines change and we might move a little bit less, eat differently or take different medications. Some people notice more low blood sugars, slower recovery or memory changes that make self-management of any condition trickier, and we can become frail. The really good news is frailty isn't inevitable and we can do a lot to prevent or even improve it through activity, food and support. We won't have time today to touch on everything that impacts on living well with type 1 diabetes, but I have popped some resources at the end for you to take a look at that you might find useful. So this has been developed by Professor Melanie Davies at the Leicester Diabetes Centre in association with the American Diabetes Association. Our guidance for the UK is for people to do 150 active minutes a week, which for a lot of people when we're still at work, raising families, helping older relatives is really tricky. And although this says for type 2 diabetes at the top, we know that these 5 health behaviours can have a huge impact on anybody and everybody. Even light intensity physical activity has been shown to have improvements on physical health, mental well-being, and can help with managing glucose levels, cholesterol levels, and blood pressure levels. The 5 S's are sitting, stepping, sleep, sweating and strengthening. They're all really crucial parts of managing any long-term condition. For example, we know that even just adding 500 steps a day reduces your chance of getting heart and circulation problems, and also reduces the chances of death from any cause by between 2 and 9%. We don't have time to go into all of those areas today, but I've put the link on the Leicester Diabetes website that explores each of those sections and tells you how it can help to manage diabetes and the other benefits from what are some really small changes to our physical behaviours. I think it's important to think about some of the things that help us as we age to prevent us from getting ill. And also, if we are unwell or frail, managing these things also helps with reducing the frailty and reducing the chance of illness. So we call them the 3 treatment targets. These are blood pressure, cholesterol, particularly the LDL cholesterol, which is the one that can be harmful, and blood sugars. It isn't just the average blood sugar that's important, so the HbA1c, but with the use of sensors, we now know that the time people spend in range and the variability, so how much that glucose level swings a bit too high and a bit too low, rather than just being at a steady state, is just as important as that average level. So these things all help to prevent small vessel changes that can affect things like eyes and feet and have a big impact on quality of life, but also those larger vessel changes that can affect the heart and the circulation. It's important to attend an annual review at the GP surgery. We found out during COVID how important these annual reviews are to have all of what's known as the 8 care processes checked. So things like the urine sample for protein, your blood pressure, your foot check. Because during COVID, when these reviews couldn't take place, people's health got worse. Because during these reviews, we can help to prevent problems in the first place, but also we identify the earliest signs and symptoms of different conditions. And if we get treatment in earlier, we can help people to live not just longer lives, but healthier, happier lives. So for example, if we can catch something like chronic kidney disease really early and start on treatment, we can possibly prevent somebody from ever needing to be on dialysis or need a kidney transplant. It's also important to remember that treatment goals and targets change with frailty, not with age. And so when you have your annual review, the question should be asked about assessing you for frailty. And that's because, for example, having something like lower blood sugar levels or lower blood pressure levels as we age can be just or more harmful than having them slightly higher. So you should be assessed for frailty at annual reviews. And if you're found to have a level of frailty, then the clinician you're working with should help you to decide what the targets for your HbA1c, time in range, and blood pressure should be. Because our treatment goals change over time. So when we're younger, when we're healthy, and if we just have mild frailty or no frailty at all, the aims of treating is to reverse frailty or to stop it from getting worse, to maintain how we function at the moment, and to keep our independence and quality of life, and also to prevent those vessel changes we talked about. As we become more frail, it's more important to keep the quality of life we have or improve it or to stop it from declining, to limit complications with vessels from getting worse, and to stop hospitalisations. So really quality of life and preventing symptoms and going into hospital becomes the more important priority. This is one of the reasons that as people get older and live with frailty, that we change some of those targets, because changes happen inside our bodies. So as people with type 1 diabetes age, there can be changes in hypoglycemia risk, so how likely it is for you to have hypos. But also you can have a weakened warning sign or different warning signs to when you were younger or didn't have any frailty. Hypos obviously increase the risk of falls, but they also can make things like memory and thinking changes worse. Older adults may not be able to sense the low blood sugar, so we need to consider other symptoms. Things like unexplained fall, so somebody's falling frequently or a general lack of coordination. Confusion or unusual behaviour, so that can be misinterpreted as worsening of things like dementia or even being drunk. Agitation and personality changes, so older individuals may become irritable, aggressive or withdrawn, and if that's not usual, we should be considering hypos. You can have just a general feeling of being unwell, so vague, non-specific feeling of being ill or very tired is quite common. drowsiness and tiredness, so being unusually sleepy, difficulty with speech or slurred speech, and this can sometimes be misinterpreted as things like stroke, and nausea, so unexplained nausea can be a symptom. Waking up with a headache can indicate you've been having hypos in the night, not being aware of them, and so can things like disturbed sleep or confusion upon waking, and if you've got a very poor appetite or difficulty feeding yourself. Obviously, CGM massively helps with these things because you can set alarms to warn you when you have hypos, but it's worth bearing those atypical symptoms in mind, because what we do tell people is actually, if how you feel doesn't match with your sensor data, you should do a finger prick. Symptoms might change over time. So moving on to how technology can help, we know that using technology for older people really helps with their general overall well-being. It helps with treatment satisfaction and quality of life. It can help to prevent some of that frailty or slow down the progression if you already have it. It reduces the risk of hospitalisation. Preventing hypoglycemia can help to prevent problems with memory and thinking. So it helps with what we call cognitive impairment and things like dementia. Really important to maintain that for as long as possible so that you can maintain the self-management that you're already doing for as long as possible. It reduces the rate of call-outs for things like paramedics and emergency doctors and admissions to hospital. And as we said before, improves quality of life. We already know about things like hybrid closed loop, or what's named an artificial pancreas, pods, that check sugar levels and adjust insulin automatically along with your CGM sensors. But there's lots of exciting things coming up next that are going to really help people generally living with type 1 diabetes, but these improvements will also help us as we age. So things like new devices where you could have a hybrid closed loop that has insulin and glucagon in it, which can help to manage hypos better. There's smarter algorithms in some of the hybrid closed loop systems that can help predict and prevent high and low blood sugar. Also, next-gen sensors that may measure more than just glucose. For example, they may measure glucose and ketones as well. We already have things like smart pens, and they're getting smarter, but we're also looking at things like longer-lasting pumps, so devices that can work for up to 30 days. And there's some experimental systems that are being researched at the moment that release insulin using light. So lots that's up and coming to help people living with type 1 to manage their diabetes. I think my biggest piece of advice is to plan for the future. So you can look online at things like advanced care planning and doing respect forms with your GP. This can make a huge difference if you do become unwell or you are hospitalised, because people living with type 1 diabetes do an amazing job of managing all of their devices, insulin, sugar levels, food intake, other medications. Actually, if you're unwell and you're relying on somebody else to do that, it's so important that they know the basics about you, your insulin, what technology you're using, where they might get spare kit from if you're admitted to hospital. So try and have a respect form and or an advanced care plan, and you can find these online. I have created an advanced care plan document for people living with type 1 diabetes, and you can email me if you'd like a copy, because when I looked, I couldn't find anything specific, and it's so important people know how you manage your insulin and glucose levels so that they can do that for you if needs be. So finally, people with type 1 diabetes are now living longer, which is a success worth celebrating. But with this also brings challenges around managing type 1 diabetes in later life. And as more individuals reach later life, these issues will become increasingly common. So we've talked today about some of the things you can do to keep well, to keep healthy, and to prevent frailty. And as healthcare professionals, we need to do more research and gain knowledge so that we can support you better. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer those today.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Next up, we'll be hearing from my colleague Jim Patterson, who is going to share insights into some of the key breakthroughs in policy over the past year and what they mean for the future of type 1 diabetes advocacy.
Thanks, Sarah, and good evening, everyone. My name is Jim. I'm a Senior Policy and Public Affairs Officer with Breakthrough T1D. And today I'm going to be discussing what our team have been up to over the last year and what you can expect from us over the next year. So I actually thought I'd start by detailing what it is that Policy and Public Affairs actually is. A lot of you might have dealings with our social media team or our community engagement team through the events that we run. But because we're a little bit less community facing, what we do is possibly a little bit more obscure. So in short, public affairs is the building and maintaining of relationships with key decision makers. So this might include MPs, Lords, the NHS, civil servants, and it involves developing policy positions, which we do by engaging with researchers, people with lived experience, etc. And we communicate that policy position to those stakeholders to make changes that will improve the lives of people living with type 1 diabetes. Public affairs is really important because it allows us to communicate what needs to change, how they need to change to the people who have the power to actually make those changes. So next slide, please. Yeah. How do we do this? So we do this, a lot of our work goes through what's called the All-Party Parliamentary Group, or the APPG for short. So an APPG is a group of parliamentarians from both houses, so that includes MPs and Lords, from any political party with an interest in a particular topic. And just as an example, that it can be almost any topic. There are currently 368 registered APPGs from, focusing on lots of different things. But for today, we're interested in the APPG for diabetes. Breakthrough T1D, in collaboration with Diabetes UK, provide what's called the Secretariat. So that means that we do a lot of the day-to-day management and kind of bureaucracy of making sure they operate. The advantage of having an APPG is it gives you unparalleled access to political systems. So we use IPPG to make sure we have parliamentarians raising awareness of the issues that we care about and that you care about during debates or asking written questions to ministers. It can give you insight about what's coming up in Parliament that otherwise might not be as apparent. So it's a really crucial resource for working in this space. Next slide, please. So I'll start with our Aging with T1D report, which was published in June of this year. As a little bit of background, it builds on what's called the Getting It Right First Time report, which was carried out in 2020 by NHS England. But we've been hearing anecdotal stories from you guys about the new challenge they face as they aged with type 1 diabetes. So we wanted to do a real deep dive into how common these problems were and exactly what these problems were. So we carried out market research on hundreds of people living with type 1 diabetes over the age of 45. Whilst the Getting the Right First Time report focused specifically on hospital care, we focus on a few different topics. So unfortunately, we found very little to indicate improvement from the Getting It Right First Time report, or GIRF report. The majority of respondents who'd recently been in hospital did not have access to a diabetes specialist during their stay, for instance. Many of the experienced hospital staff taking away insulin pens or having insulin locked away, or being restricted to an arbitrary amount of insulin. So not only was there a culture of discouraging self-management, but this was actually made worse by the fact there was a lack of knowledge and training on type 1 diabetes from staff. So going on to the menopause. So the symptoms of menopause can drastically affect the physical and mental health of women. The hormonal changes associated with menopause can make it harder to manage blood glucose levels. It can make them more unpredictable and make you more insulin resistant. And unfortunately, a lot of women reported it felt like they had to relearn their type 1 diabetes all over again. And they went on to say that they felt really unsupported and even isolated at this time because there was a lack of support and a lack of information on this topic. Women who were able to access treatments like hormone replacement therapy found them really beneficial in stabilizing their blood glucose levels. But again, there were lots of women who reported they weren't able to access these because their doctors incorrectly told them that having type 1 diabetes precluded them from being able to access HRT. And then lastly, going on to kind of the older age adults, we found that getting older was a kind of mixed experience for respondents. So for many, retirement meant they could focus on their hobbies. Some were pleasantly surprised they'd reached retirement age at all. If they'd been diagnosed when they were younger, they were told that type 1 diabetes was a life-limiting condition. So in some ways, it's really great to see progress at that in even just our lifetimes. But unfortunately, most 8 in 10 respondents found that getting older was a source of intense anxiety, so especially around their ability to manage their diabetes as their cognitive and physical abilities declined and how this might impact their autonomy. This was compounded by concerns around developing complications associated with type 1 diabetes, so retinopathy and neuropathy. People were concerned about the possibility of needing to a care home because there's a widespread perception that staff lacked training and understanding of type 1 diabetes. So these factors combined meant that actually people felt that the moment they relinquished control of their diabetes meant that their health would decline fairly precipitously. So moving on to the recommendations, I'm not going to linger too much, but they were generated from our respondents. So Broadly, we'd like to ensure that wherever possible, the individual maintains their right to self-manage and to support them by ensuring access to diabetes specialists when in hospital, and we'll be working with the NHS when their review of type 1 diabetes care commences, which is likely to be towards the end of next year. We're encouraging researchers to build a better understanding of how menopause impacts women with type 1 diabetes and communicating this to healthcare professionals along with appropriate treatments. And we're looking to improve care homes and domiciliary care as an option for those with type 1 diabetes by making sure that staff are trained and capable of delivering person-centred care and making the most of tech to facilitate this. So on to early detection. So what is early detection? Early detection is a way of finding out if people are at risk of a particular health issue so that treatment can be planned and information and support can be offered before they become symptomatic. Currently, actually, I'm just going to move on to this diagram quickly. So you can see there's 3 distinct stages of diabetes. In stage 1, a blood test will reveal multiple autoantibodies. So just to quickly explain that term, antibodies are a protein that a person's immune system produces in response to a threat. But unfortunately, in type 1 diabetes, individual immune system produces these antibodies in response to their own insulin-producing cells. And these are what's called autoantibodies. So in stage 1, you'll find these autoantibodies, but the destructive process hasn't begun yet. So their blood glucose will be normal, and you'll have no symptoms. As you progress on to stage 2, that destructive process has begun. So blood glucose will become a little bit abnormal, but crucially, there will still be no symptoms. As you progress to stage 3, this is where blood glucose has been elevated for a period of time, and this is where people become symptomatic. It's often when people are diagnosed, and about a quarter of these when they're experiencing diabetic ketoacidosis. So the goal of early detection is to move diagnosis from stage 3 to stage 2 before someone ever becomes symptomatic. Next slide, please. Why is it important? Why do we care about doing this? So I've already said it reduces the rate of DKA at diagnosis. This in turn is associated with better HbA1c, so like long-term blood glucose levels, fewer hypos, and fewer instances of recurrent DKA in the years post-diagnosis. So there's long-term clinical benefits to early diagnosis. Because of this, it reduces use of health services post-diagnosis, so there's an economic argument to be made. It gives an individual more time to learn the practicalities of living with type 1 diabetes. So carb counting, insulin ratios can be very difficult to take that on when you are just being diagnosed. There's a lot to take on during that time. Reduce the trauma of diagnosis. And we can also start to take advantage of emerging treatments which can modify the course of the condition, which I'll discuss in a couple of slides' time. Next slide, please. So what have we done in this space? So we published a white paper on early detection. It was months worth of work. We collaborated with a lot of researchers, people with lived experience. We're really proud of it. It's really ambitious. And we launched that in Parliament about a month ago. We've ensured that this issue is on the political agenda by prompting MPs to ask written questions to the Health Minister on early detection. And we're also doing 3 roundtables, which we'll discuss in more detail what an ideal screening programme would look like and how we go about achieving it in the UK. These roundtables are going to be attended by parliamentarians, researchers, and people with lived experience. So again, a mixture between kind of decision makers and people with expertise. So teplizumab, I mentioned drugs that can modify the course of the condition. So what is teplizumab? Teplizumab is a drug which can delay the onset of symptoms of type 1 diabetes by an average of 3 years. But it needs to be administered when someone is at stage 2 that I was talking about earlier to accrue the most benefits. We're really proud of this because Breakthrough T1D actually helped fund the research that ended up becoming this drug. Where are we at now with it? So it's been licensed by the MHRA. They basically just say that it's safe for human consumption. And it's currently going through the NICE approval process. So they say that it's cost effective for the NHS to use. We've been really integral to that latter part. So our head of policy and public affairs has been attending NICE committee sessions and giving evidence on just how life-changing those extra 3 years can be. But what's really cool is that teplizumab is just the first in the pipeline of really exciting treatments which can modify the course of the disease. So we're hopeful that in the future, a combination of these drugs can really meaningfully delay or possibly even halt that destructive process of insulin-producing cells. So what can you expect from us in 2026? So we're very hopeful that teplizumab will be accepted and can start being administered to people. Again, really kind of life-changing those extra 3 years. We're going to be progressing on the early detection agenda. So those roundtables will have wrapped up and we'll be writing a second white paper, which is stronger and focuses exactly on how the screening should look if we're looking at a general population level. And there's a possibility for some legislation that we're going to submit to raise awareness and prompt debate in Parliament. And then we're also going to be working hard to secure funding for type 1 and disordered eating pilots. These are pilots which treat a population who have eating disorders and type 1 diabetes, which is surprisingly common. Unfortunately, these services are currently running on unsustainable funding. So we're working really hard to ensure there are funding commitments so these people can get the treatment they deserve and they need. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you so much for listening. And I think there'll be questions at the end.
Thank you so much, Jim, for that brilliant insight. We are now going to watch a couple of short clips from our sponsors, Medtronic and Ipsomed.
The best thing that the Mini-Med 780G gives me is freedom, so I can act like other people my age and I don't have to be constantly thinking about diabetes. It also gives my parents some freedom, and that means that they're not always asking me what my blood sugars are because they can just look at on an app. During the night, I generally go hypo because I do a lot of sports, and so just after doing that, when I was in bed, I'd find I was mostly always hypo. I definitely get a better quality of sleep once I started the Mini-Med 780G. I would tell someone that is on multiple daily injections. I know it's like a big step and a big commitment, but it's honestly so much better. I didn't want to go onto a pump specifically with tubing, but I don't know what I'd do if I hadn't, because it allows me to just have so much freedom. I can do sports, I can do whatever I want, and I don't have to constantly thinking about tracking my blood sugars.
Thank you, Sarah. Welcome to our overview of MyLife Loop, a hybrid closed-loop insulin pump system. Here are the components. Firstly, the choice of 2 CGM sensors, Freestyle Libre 3 or Dexcom G6. The sensors allow blood glucose values to be sent to the smartphone. The smartphone holds the algorithm. Our loop system is powered by MyLife CAM APS FX, an adaptive learning algorithm which safely makes decisions about insulin requirements and communicates to the third component, the IPSA pump, a small and intuitive insulin pump.
Thank you so much, both. Okay, so we are now on our final segment of the evening. We're going to be hearing from Digibeat about their exciting work on their app, and Camille Armaki, also known as Nerdabetic, for a review and update on T1D technology. So don't go anywhere. Over to you, Maddie.
Hello, and really lovely to be with you tonight. I am super proud to be able to present to you the new Digibeat platform and app, which is now Kismet accredited and available to you to use. You will need to download the new version of the app from the App Store, and we'll put the information on the screen so you can see what that is. But effectively, you need to go to the App Store or Google Play to download it. The new website is also live, and I'm going to take you on a tour of that in a second too. But without further ado, here is the new Digibeat app.
Welcome to the Digibeat app, a place to learn, earn awards and feel empowered. The Digibeat app supports you alongside your diabetes team, giving you the knowledge, skills and confidence to manage diabetes with our award-winning resources. Our library of clinically approved videos covers everything you need to know. The app grows with you, and as you move into a new age category, you'll unlock fresh sets of resources designed for your stage of life. In the age section, access newly diagnosed, essential knowledge for your age to annual checks information. The Living with T1D section covers everything from exercise to tech, food and drink, carb counting and so much more. You can also test your knowledge in the quiz area and earn badges as you track your learning in the awards section. My T1D lets you store your insulin ratios, which is handy if your pump breaks, record your HbA1c results and keep your care plan, appointments and notes safely on your device, ideal in emergencies or when you're on the go. Stay connected with your diabetes team. Get important updates, clinic news and personalised content directly in your app. Your team can share tips and resources just for you, and Digibeat will keep you informed with regular news. Thanks to Breakthrough T1D, you can tap Coping with Diabetes to explore real stories from people living with T1D, activities to reduce burnout, tips for understanding and managing emotions, all created with UK psychologists and people living with type 1 diabetes. Through Connect, funded by Together Type 1 at Diabetes UK, you can find support from others living with T1D, learn from real-life experiences, explore local and national events from Diabetes UK, Breakthrough T1D and NHS teams. Content is suitable for all ages, helping children, teens, young adults and parents build confidence and independence. There's a free carb counter, anytime, anywhere. Quickly find carb and nutrition information, view images and portion sizes, and save favourites to make carb counting faster and easier. So what are you waiting for? Download the DigiBeat app today and let's make living with diabetes a little easier. Together.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm now going to show you around the new DigiBeat website, which is equally as exciting. It's meaning that you can search faster. Everything is really easy to find and also subcategorized so you can get to things quicker, faster. And it's great with things like screen readers or if you need things to read out aloud. So we're complying with the latest accessibility standards to help you with all of that as well. So we're really looking forward to your feedback. If you could let us know once we've shown you the tour, any feedback to hello@DigiBeat or app@DigiBeat, we would love to hear that from you. Okay, so I'm just going to start the tour now. So here is the DigiBeat website, just digibeat.org. DigiBeat is a trusted self-management platform and app for the whole family and community. We're built by families for families and we're clinically approved by NHS experts from across the country and then rechecked at Leeds Children's Hospital. Everything that's here is available for you to use for free and can be translated into lots of different languages. If you just click on the little man here, you'll be able to...
Then the Reach Deck toolbar and I offer speech, reading and translation support.
So you'll be able to click on a language here and choose a preferred language. So if you know a community of people who might need other languages, you can use that. But you can also read aloud. You can have the whole website read aloud to you. Okay, I'm going to cross that for now and go back to our tour. So on the tour, you've got the homepage, essentials, learning about type 1 diabetes. We've got brand new awareness resources that you can use and share with your community. Really good resources for things like if you're doing assemblies, that sort of thing. These are great animated explainers of kind of how type 1 is challenging to manage for young people, but what's needed as well. We've also got stories on here and we've got links through to other awareness pages to help you. We've got technology resources that would be super helpful for anybody who's reasonably new, or you've got family members who want to learn more about glucose monitoring, hybrid closed loop, for example, how it all works, all the different systems available here so you can learn more. So all of the technology resources are on there. We've got a type 1 stories page where you can get lots of information, lots of different people's stories to share, feel connected and not feel alone with your diabetes. We've also got young people talking about what they need to know at each age. So that's our goals of diabetes education, which we'll come to in a moment. And as well as that, we have a link through to our DigiTalk, so you can watch back any of our live events or come and watch live some of the resources. We've got coping with diabetes. We've had young people talking about their mental health, and we've got sports and exercise resources, and we've got tech. So you can watch all these again, lots of lived experience for you to tap into. And similarly, we've got a page on the DigiBeat app, which I'm going to talk to you about in a minute, which tells you all the ways that you can download and set up the app. So this is all available to you. As well as all that, you can access essentials. If you've got family members at home who need to recap on what is type 1 diabetes, how to do blood checks, how to manage different aspects of diabetes, it's all on here. Injection technique, glucagon, the lot is all on here. And there's a Living with Diabetes workbook, which is really simple, easy read. So anyway, I would urge you to go on, search anything that you want, for example, like hypos, and it will come up with all the resources that we have on hypos. So super search engine as well. So anything that you need. But similarly, you can also access all the age resources on here. So if you want to dip in to see what the young adults are getting in terms of their resources, for example, you can see all of that on here as well. So again, links through to the goals of diabetes education, but also the emotional wellbeing resources that we've done, sick day rules information, and also things like driving, alcohol management, etc. is all on here. So I'm going to stop there and just say a big thank you for having me tonight. And I'm going to leave you with a collaborative project to encourage young people to take part in clinical trials. And this is something that we've been doing with Breakthrough T1D. Over to you, Eden.
How did we get tech? How did we get from here to here? How does tech get better? Be the change. Be part of the progress. Breakthrough T1D.
Thank you so much, Maddie, and the rest of the DigiBeat team as well. So now we're going to turn to one of the most exciting areas in Type 1 breakthroughs, technology. From continuous glucose monitoring to automated insulin delivery, breakthroughs in tech are transforming daily life for people with T1D. Our next speaker, Camille Armaki, will explore the latest innovations and give us a glimpse of what's on the horizon for the future. Over to you, Camille.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Camille Armaki. I've been living with type 1 diabetes myself for over 13 years, and I've been sharing personal updates about diabetes technology on YouTube on my own YouTube channel called Nerdibetic for the last 8. And the great team at Breakthrough T1D have invited me tonight to share some updates on type 1 diabetes technology and give you a sneak peek into what's coming in the future and some things that are important from my point of view. So tonight I'm giving you 5 key updates across a variety of diabetes tech to end the program with a few things that are happening in the future. The first one is the 5-year NHS hybrid closed loop rollout. So you've heard about hybrid closed loop technology already. It's when a continuous glucose monitor is paired with an insulin pump to autonomously adjust insulin delivery in the background, removing a lot of the burden of living with type 1 diabetes and improving quality of life. Improving what I like to call time and happiness, which is time and range, which is the sort of medical, clinical way of measuring improvements, and mental health and time and happiness. So thinking about like your quality of your sleep, which is very important and often gets missed when we talk about clinical outcomes. Things like quality of life and what I call time and happiness, I think is very important. So the hybrid closed loop policy is now live and it's a 5-year rollout to roll this technology to a lot of people. And I wanted to just focus on the numbers here. Last time there was a T1D audit, we have audited and found that there was 227,435 adults living with type 1 diabetes nationwide. The current criteria, the 5-year criteria, which covers children, pregnant, adults with HbA1c of over 58, or with people with disabled and hypos, their existing criteria covers over 150,000 people. So that's over 60% of the T1D adult population. And hopefully that gives you a scale and idea as to why this is taking that amount of time. The rollout started last year and it's well on its way. The most common question I get about hybrid closed loop in the country is why it's taken 5 years to roll this technology out. Well, you know, that's training 150,000 people living with type 1 diabetes on how to use it, training all of their teams to ensure there's a right ecosystem around the person to, you know, give them access to tech and knowledge, and, you know, that takes time. So the current criteria covers 150,000 people, which is well over 60%. That's the first update. The second update is to do with technology itself, and that's to do with continuous glucose monitors. I wanted to tell you about CGMs with ketone monitoring. So several companies are working on this. The one that you're very familiar with is Abbott with the Libre. So Abbott, they're working on a dual sensor which measures both glucose, as they do today, but also ketones. You might ask yourself, why would you want to continuously measure your ketones? The answer to that is actually, it's early detection of diabetes ketoacidosis, sometimes referred to as DKA. The very common misconception when it comes to DKA is that high ketones are always associated with high glucose, which is simply not true. High ketones can happen even when your glucose looks fine. So, glucose can sometimes lag behind those. So being able to continuously monitor what those levels are means you can proactively have a safer use of things like hybrid closed loop systems or insulin pumps, because if there is a problem with insulin delivery, ketone monitoring will detect that sooner than a CGM would, because that glucose wouldn't rise as quickly as ketone levels would. Currently in trials, not commercially available yet, but it's sort of very interesting next frontier for continuous glucose monitors, which will measure both molecules, not just glucose, but also ketones. The third update is to do with patch pumps. So there's a new sort of system coming to the UK from Tandem called Tandem Mobi. So for those of you familiar with Tandem's T-Slim X2 insulin pump, there's a patch version of that insulin pump which has gained CE marking for its sort of approval in May of this year. There's no word on when or if it's officially coming to the UK, but we all know that it is going to come to the UK eventually. It's just a matter of when UK will make it in its commercial rollout across Europe. The company has stated that the commercial rollout in some European countries will begin by the end of this year, so we've got a month to go. And so I definitely want to stay tuned for if you want a more patch style of an insulin pump. Next update is regarding smart MDI. So I think this is tech that's really worth highlighting for people who choose not to wear an insulin pump because they don't want something like an insulin pump, whether that's tubed or tubeless, attached to them, or they just simply cannot access it, because I'm very, very mindful that, it's a 5-year program. There's going to be people waiting, and even once the full program is enabled, we will still have a decent population of people living in the country who do not have access to hybrid closed loops. So smart MDI, it sort of brings some of that intelligence to people who use pens. So the system to really highlight there is the one from Medtronic, the smart MDI system by Medtronic, which proactively links what you've done on your pen, sort of what injections you've injected, with your glucose trends. So it proactively will notify you of what if things are missed insulin doses. So if you've eaten and forgotten to bolus, which I've done that hundreds, if not thousands of times in my life, it sort of will know that you haven't injected, because it continuously tracks your injection, because the pen is connected to your phone, so proactively alert you to that. And it also has other intelligence, like monitoring temperature of the insulin to make sure it's not in a hot environment. So if you have it on the table, it will proactively tell you to put it somewhere else. And then the fifth update that I wanted to give you is about a new area of technology, which is all to do with type 1 diabetes screening, which is something that you've heard about on the program earlier today. So that's a very complex area covering both population-wide screening to early detect T1D, so people are diagnosed in non-DKA-like situations, but also screening relatives of people who already live with type 1 to detect their risk of developing type 1 in the future. So the new tech that I wanted to highlight there is DNA testing. So you might have heard about antibody testing, which is a blood-based system where we will check how many antibodies and what type of antibodies you have in your blood to determine the likelihood of developing type 1 in the future. DNA testing is a swab, which, in a similar way that you would do for COVID testing, perhaps, where you just swab your mouth and send a test to the company doing this at the moment is called T1D Scout, and they will analyze that data to determine the risk of developing T1D. That is both a cheaper and less invasive way of testing because it doesn't require a blood test. So if you want to learn more about the screening, I've actually recently shared a documentary on my YouTube channel, Nerdbetic, about psychology and technology of this new area. I encourage you to check it out if you are interested in learning more. So those are my 5 updates. So that is a 5-year rollout of hybrid closed loop across the country. Continuous glucose monitors getting ketone monitoring soon. New patch pumps, including Tandem Mobi, coming to the UK soon. Smart MDI systems and new DNA testing for T1D screening. Thank you so much for having me. I hope you've had an amazing event and have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you very much, Camille. Super exciting to hear what's coming up in the future in the world of T1D technology. I'm now just going to finish off with some last bits from Breakthrough T1D. So throughout, let's just add that on. So throughout 2026, we will be offering virtual sessions just like tonight's, as well as several incredible in-person events taking place across the 4 nations. If you're keen to stay up to date on our upcoming events, please hover your phone camera over the QR code now, or click the link that's being dropped into the comments section, and keep an eye on our page. Our first event in 2026 is actually live now. It's a virtual discovery day on T1D technology taking place on the 13th of January. We've already got an incredible agenda for this event, so please make sure you sign up now so you don't miss out. So we're always looking for people connected to Type 1 to share their experiences at our events. If you're interested in joining a future lived experience panel or presenting like Bruce did today, please scan the QR code or follow the link in the comments section to fill out a form to tell us a little bit about yourself. We would love to have you involved. There are also many other ways to get involved and support our work. So if you're over 18, you can join the Insight and Experience panel, where you can share your views, shape policies, take part in market research, and engage in research projects, including clinical trials. If you're 25 and under, you can become a youth ambassador, where you can connect with others of a similar age, raise awareness and funds, and develop new skills. Finally, we're always looking for support at our events, whether that's lending a hand at registration, refreshments, by being a smiley, friendly face on the door, by sharing your story. We would love to have you involved. So if you're interested in any of these roles, please let us know by emailing the address on the screen. So like I mentioned earlier, if you're keen to get involved in any of our upcoming walks or treks, we have a wide range of UK and overseas challenges available, including the Yorkshire Three Peaks and Snowdon. So do scan the QR code to read a little bit more about these opportunities, as they're great fun and another opportunity for you to meet other people from the T1D community. And finally, we would just like to say a massive thank you. We would really appreciate any feedback on this event. If you have a couple of minutes now, please follow the link or scan the QR code, and do let us know what your opinions are on this event. We do listen to your feedback and make sure that our events keep improving from them. A huge thank you to our sponsors, our speakers, my colleagues Chris and Dan, who are behind the scenes today, and to all of you who are with us today. We hope you learned something from today. We hope you feel inspired. We'll be holding the webinar open for another 15 minutes or so. So do read anything you might have missed in the comments section. Please note we'll also be sending out a link to watch this event back at a time of your choice. It will be on our YouTube video. We're also live on LinkedIn and X right now at Breakthrough T1D. So you can watch at your own convenience or share if you found this event useful. So thank you again, and we hope to see you at a future Discovery Day.
Thank you. you.